Welcome. In this video, we dive into a calm and immersive story. Sit back, relax, and let the story carry you away. The complete story of Fallout 4, a chronicle of the Commonwealth, before the bombs. In the year 2077, the world stood on the precipice of annihilation. The United States had been at war with China for over a decade, fighting over the last remaining oil reserves on Earth. This conflict, known as the Resource Wars, had consumed nations and reshaped the globe. By October of that year, the situation had grown desperate. On the morning of October 23rd, 2077, in the suburb of Sanctuary Hills, just outside Boston, Massachusetts, a family began their day like any other. The man of the house was a military veteran who had served in the Anchorage Reclamation, where American forces had pushed back Chinese invaders from Alaska. His spouse cared for their infant son, Sean, in their modest home along the cul-de-sac. The house, like others in the neighborhood, was outfitted with the latest conveniences. A Mr. Handy robot butler named Codsworth performed household chores, and a Pip-Boy device awaited collection. That morning, a representative from Vault-Tec arrived at their door. The corporation had been contracted by the government to build massive underground shelters called vaults, supposedly to protect the American population in case of nuclear war. The family had been selected for a space in Vault 111, located nearby. The Vault-Tec representative assured them this was merely a precaution, a way to ensure their safety should the unthinkable occur. Minutes after the representative departed, the unthinkable happened. Air raid sirens began to wail across Sanctuary Hills. A news bulletin crackled over the radio. Nuclear detonations had been confirmed. The bombs were falling. The family had only moments to act. Scooping up young Sean, they ran toward the vault entrance on the hillside, joining their panicking neighbors. Behind them, Codsworth called out, unable to accompany them to safety. They reached the vault platform just as a nuclear warhead detonated in the distance over what had been Boston. The shockwave rolled toward them as the platform descended into the earth, carrying them to safety by mere seconds. The world they knew ended in atomic fire. Vault 111, frozen in time. Inside Vault 111, the family and other residents of Sanctuary Hills were told by Vault security that they needed to undergo a decontamination procedure. They were directed into pod-like chambers. As the pods sealed shut, the truth revealed itself. These were not decontamination chambers, but cryogenic freezing pods. Vault 111 was not a shelter at all, but an experiment in suspended animation. The residents were test subjects, frozen in time against their will. For an unknown period, the family slept in cryogenic suspension. Then, in a moment of consciousness, the pods reactivated. Through the frosted glass of the cryopod, the parent watched in horror as two figures entered the vault chamber, a man in a distinctive uniform and a bald, scarred mercenary. The mercenary forced open the spouse's pod and attempted to take baby Sean. When the spouse refused to release the child, the scarred man raised a pistol and fired a single shot. The spouse fell dead in the cryogenic pod. The murderer took Sean and left, and the man who had accompanied him mentioned something about the Institute and the backup. The pods reactivated, returning the surviving parent to frozen sleep, trapped with the image of their spouse's murder and their child's kidnapping. Decades passed in frozen silence. Then, on October 23rd, 2287, exactly 210 years after the bombs fell, something malfunctioned in Vault 111. The cryogenic systems failed and the pods opened. The surviving parent emerged into the vault chamber, finding the spouse's body still preserved in the pod, frozen in death. The other residents of Vault 111 had not been as fortunate. Their pods had failed at different times, and they had all perished, alone, grief-stricken, and driven by a singular purpose. The survivor made their way through the empty vault. The Overseer's terminal revealed the truth. Vault 111 had been an experiment from the beginning. Its residents nothing but test subjects. The vault's life support systems were failing. The survivor reached the vault door, which ground open after 2 centuries, and stepped into the wasteland. A changed world. The Commonwealth that greeted the vault dweller was unrecognizable. 2 centuries of nuclear winter and radioactive decay had transformed the landscape. What had once been the suburbs of Boston was now a twisted wilderness. Buildings stood as skeletal ruins, cars rusted into husks, and the very air carried a tinge of radiation. Yet life persisted in this hostile environment. Returning to Sanctuary Hills, the survivor found their former neighborhood in ruins. Houses had collapsed, the street was cratered and overgrown, and a sense of desolation pervaded the place. Only one familiar face remained: Codsworth, the Mr. Handy robot, still dutifully attempting to maintain the property after 210 years. The robot's cheerful demeanor barely concealed the madness that had crept in from centuries of isolation. When questioned, Codsworth confirmed what the survivor already knew: everyone was gone, and the world had been destroyed by nuclear fire. Codsworth spoke of nearby settlements, of Concord to the northwest where people had gathered. The robot had heard gunfire from that direction recently. With nothing else to guide them and a desperate need to find anyone who might know about Sean's kidnappers, the survivor set out for Concord, carrying only a simple pistol and the vault suit that marked them as a relic of the old world. The road to Concord revealed the new reality of the Commonwealth. Blood bugs the size of dogs buzzed through the air, their proboscises capable of draining a person in seconds. Bloatflies, mutated from common insects, exploded when threatened. And everywhere, radiation hotspots glowed with a sickly green light, the ground itself poisonous from centuries of atomic decay. The Minutemen's last stand. In the town of Concord, the survivor heard the sound of gunfire and a woman's voice calling for help from a balcony. A group of settlers had taken refuge in the Museum of Freedom, surrounded by raiders who had been terrorizing the Commonwealth. The raiders wore salvaged armor and wielded crude weapons, shouting threats and demands. Inside the museum, the survivor found a small group of desperate people. Their leader was Preston Garvey, one of the last of an organization called the Minutemen. Garvey wore a distinctive colonial-style outfit and carried a laser musket. With him were 4 settlers: Sturgis, a handyman; Marcy and June Long, a couple traumatized by recent losses; and Mama Murphy, an old woman who claimed to have visions induced by a drug called Jet. Garvey explained their situation. They had been traveling to Sanctuary Hills, hoping to establish a settlement, when raiders attacked them. These weren't ordinary raiders. Their leader was a person in powered armor, a hulking suit that made them nearly invincible. The group was trapped, running low on ammunition, with no way out. On the museum's roof, the survivor discovered a crashed vertibird, a military helicopter from before the war. Inside lay a suit of T-45 power armor and a minigun. Sturgis, despite being a simple settler, somehow knew how to interface with the power armor and explained that it needed a fusion core to operate. Remarkably, one could be found in the basement of the museum, still powering emergency systems after 2 centuries. Wearing the power armor and wielding the minigun, the survivor became a walking tank. They stepped out onto the street of Concord, where the raider leader, revealed to be in similar power armor, waited. But the raiders had a final surprise. They had chained a deathclaw in the underground. The creature broke free, a massive reptilian horror with claws that could tear through steel. In the streets of Concord, a battle erupted between the survivor in power armor, the Deathclaw, and the remaining raiders. When the dust settled, Preston Garvey and his group were free. Grateful, Garvey explained his mission. The Minutemen had once been the Commonwealth's defenders, ordinary citizens who answered the call to protect settlements from raiders, supermutants, and other threats. At their height, they had been respected and numerous, with headquarters at the castle, a pre-war fort, but betrayals, infighting, and a massacre at Quincy had destroyed them. Garvey was the last Minuteman, still carrying the mission even though the organization had fallen. The group traveled to Sanctuary Hills, where they began to establish a settlement. The survivor helped them build beds, plant crops, and set up defenses. But the survivor's purpose lay elsewhere, finding Sean. Garvey suggested traveling to Diamond City, the largest settlement in the Commonwealth, where someone might have information about the mysterious institute and the kidnapping. The Great Green Jewel, Following the remains of highways and avoiding the most dangerous areas, the survivor journeyed southeast toward Boston. The closer they came to the city, the more intense the danger became. Super mutants, massive green-skinned humanoids that stood over 7 feet tall, patrolled the ruins. These creatures were once human, transformed by exposure to the forced evolutionary virus. They captured people to drag back to their lairs, where more of their kind would be created through forced mutation. Their simple minds made them savage, and they organized into crude war bands led by the strongest among them. Diamond City lay in the heart of the ruins, built inside the remains of Fenway Park, the famous baseball stadium. The settlement's walls were constructed from the stadium's structure, and its gate was the old scoreboard. A crowd had gathered at the gate, where guards argued with a man trying to gain entry. The man, a reporter named Piper Wright, had been locked out of the city by the mayor. She noticed the newcomer and convinced the survivor to claim they were a traitor so the guards would open the gate. The trick worked, and both entered the city. Inside, Diamond City was a marvel of post-apocalyptic civilization. The settlement had been built in the stadium's interior, with homes constructed from the old seats and vendor stands. The central marketplace bustled with traders, guards maintained order, and a power plant kept lights running. The city had become the Commonwealth's main hub, drawing traders and settlers from across the region. Piper, grateful for the help, directed the survivor to Detective Valentine's agency. Nick Valentine, she explained, was the best detective in the Commonwealth and specialized in finding missing persons. But when the survivor reached the agency, they found only Valentine's assistant, Ellie Perkins. She explained that Nick had gone missing himself, taken by mobsters to a place called Park Street Station. The synthetic detective. Park Street Station had become the headquarters of a gang led by a man named Skinny Malone. The mobster fancied himself a crime boss in the old world style, and his girlfriend, Darla, served as his lieutenant. They had taken Nick Valentine hostage in the vault beneath the station, a place filled with traps and triggermen, gangsters wielding Tommy guns and wearing suits. Fighting through the vault, the survivor discovered Nick Valentine locked in a cell. The detective was immediately distinctive. His synthetic skin was partially torn away, revealing the mechanical components beneath. Nick Valentine was a synth, a synthetic human created by the mysterious Institute. But unlike other synths, Nick was unique. He possessed the memories and personality of a pre-war detective, Nick Valentine, who had lived in Boston before the bombs fell. How those memories were transferred to a synthetic body remained a mystery even to Nick himself. Confronting Skinny Malone, the survivor could choose to talk their way out or fight through the mobsters. Either way, Nick Valentine was freed, and he agreed to help find Sean. Back at his agency, Nick listened to the story of the kidnapping and immediately recognized key details. The man in the distinctive uniform sounded like a mercenary, and the mention of the Institute was crucial. The Institute was the Commonwealth's boogeyman, a shadowy organization that existed somewhere beneath the ruins, conducting experiments and creating synths. People feared them, blamed them for disappearances, and traded rumors about their capabilities. Nick suggested seeking out someone who had actually worked with the Institute, a mercenary named Kellogg. According to Nick's sources, Kellogg lived in Diamond City itself, in a house that no one was allowed to enter. Breaking into Kellogg's house, the survivor and Nick found evidence that confirmed the worst fears. Kellogg was indeed the scarred mercenary who had murdered the spouse and taken Sean. Holotapes and terminal entries revealed that Kellogg had been living in Diamond City for years, keeping a low profile. Most importantly, they found evidence that he had recently left with a young boy, Sean, heading to Fort Hagen, an old military installation west of the city. The man who wouldn't die. Fort Hagen stood isolated in the wasteland, a massive pre-war military complex that had somehow remained relatively intact. Synths patrolled its exterior, confirming the Institute's involvement. Inside, the facility's automated defenses had been reactivated, and more synths guarded the corridors. At the deepest level, in the command center, Kellogg waited. The mercenary was alone, sitting calmly as the survivor approached. When confronted, Kellogg showed no remorse for the murder he had committed. He explained fragments of the truth. He was over 100 years old, kept alive by cybernetic implants that the Institute had given him. He had been the Institute's surface operative for decades, doing their dirty work. As for Sean, Kellogg revealed a shocking truth. The child was no longer a child. The kidnapping had happened 60 years ago by the Wasteland's timeline. Sean had grown up in the Institute, and the survivor had spent most of the intervening decades frozen in Vault 111. The conversation could end only one way. Kellogg had been sent to Fort Hagen to wait for the survivor, to eliminate the loose end that the parent represented. The command center became a battlefield as Kellogg, backed by synth reinforcements, fought to kill the survivor. The mercenary's cybernetic enhancements made him formidable, but he fell in the end, finally mortal after more than a century of life. On Kellogg's body, the survivor found a cybernetic implant, a device that stored his memories. Nick Valentine recognized its significance. There was someone in the Commonwealth who could read those memories, a scientist who specialized in experimental technology. If they could access Kellogg's memories, they might discover the location of the Institute, into the Memory Den. In the neighborhood of Good Neighbor, a settlement built in the ruins of Scale Square, there existed a place called the Memory Den. This establishment offered a unique service, the ability to relive memories through technology. Its proprietor, Dr. Amari, was one of the few scientists in the Commonwealth who understood pre-war technology and its applications. Good Neighbor itself was a haven for the Commonwealth's outcasts. Where Diamond City turned away ghouls and synths, Good Neighbor welcomed them. The town was run by John Hancock, a ghoul who had once been human but had deliberately exposed himself to massive radiation to experience life as the Commonwealth's outcasts did. Hancock ruled Good Neighbor with a philosophy of freedom and tolerance, though he maintained order through the neighborhood watch, enforcers who kept raiders and troublemakers in line. Dr. Amari examined Kellogg's cybernetic implant with fascination. She believed she could use her memory lounger technology to allow the survivor to enter Kellogg's memories directly. It was an unprecedented procedure, potentially dangerous, but it offered the only path forward. Nick Valentine volunteered to serve as a bridge. His synthetic nature would allow him to interface with Kellogg's implant and guide the survivor through the memories. Inside the memory lounger, consciousness shifted. The survivor found themselves experiencing Kellogg's life through his eyes. They saw his childhood on the West Coast, how he had become a mercenary, how he had lost his own family to violence. They experienced his first contact with the Institute decades ago, when he had been hired for a special job. The memories jumped forward, showing Kellogg in the Commonwealth, working for a man who appeared to be in charge of the Institute's surface operations. Then came the crucial memory, Kellogg entering Vault 111, exactly as the survivor remembered. But now they experienced it from his perspective, heard his thoughts. He had been sent to retrieve the backup specimen, the child. The Institute needed untainted, pre-war DNA for some purpose Kellogg didn't fully understand. He had killed the spouse without hesitation when they resisted. It meant nothing to him. The memories continued, showing Kellogg living in Diamond City with a young Sean. But this part confused the survivor. If 60 years had passed, why was Sean still a child? The memory didn't provide answers, jumping forward to Kellogg receiving new orders. He was to take the child back to the Institute and then wait at Fort Hagen. The final crucial detail emerged, a word, a phrase that meant nothing to the survivor, but which Dr. Amari recognized: the glowing sea and the signal. When the survivor emerged from the memories, Dr. Amari explained what she had gleaned. The Institute was hidden so deeply underground that normal methods couldn't locate it. But they had to have some way to transport people in and out. There was a signal, a relay that could be detected if one knew where and how to look. The signal originated from somewhere in the glowing sea, the most irradiated region of the Commonwealth, the area where the nuclear bomb had struck directly, the glowing sea. The glowing sea lay southwest of the Commonwealth, a hellscape where the direct impact of the nuclear bomb had transformed the landscape into something alien. The ground itself glowed with radiation so intense that even with protective gear, survival was measured in minutes. The creatures that lived there had mutated beyond recognition, radscorpions the size of cars, feral ghouls that had lost all traces of humanity, and death claws that made those in the rest of the Commonwealth seem tame by comparison. Virgil was the name Dr. Amari had given, a scientist who had worked for the Institute and then escaped, now living somewhere in the glowing sea. If anyone could help the survivor get inside the Institute, it would be him. Finding him required venturing to the crater itself, to the very heart of the most dangerous place in the Commonwealth. Wearing power armor to withstand the radiation, the survivor journeyed into the glowing sea. The landscape was surreal, hills of glassed earth, pockets of molten rock still glowing after 2 centuries, storms of radioactive dust that reduced visibility to nothing. In the distance, the ruins of Cambridge and Boston were barely visible through the haze. Deep in the glowing sea, hidden in a cave system, the survivor found Virgil's laboratory. The scientist himself was a shock. He had become a super mutant, his body twisted and enlarged by the forced evolutionary virus. But unlike other super mutants, Virgil had retained his intelligence and memories. He explained that the Institute had been experimenting with FEV, trying to create their own version of the virus. Virgil had objected to their methods, particularly their use of kidnapped Commonwealth settlers as test subjects. When he threatened to expose the program, the Institute decided to eliminate him. They infected him with FEV, expecting him to lose his mind and die in the wasteland. Instead, he survived and retained his intellect, hiding in the glowing sea where even the Institute wouldn't follow. Virgil confirmed what Dr. Amari had suspected. The Institute used molecular relay technology to transport people in and out of their underground facility. It was similar to teleportation, breaking down matter and reassembling it elsewhere. The signal could be detected and intercepted, but doing so would require both advanced technical knowledge and significant resources. Virgil had been working on this problem himself, hoping to find a way back into the Institute to retrieve his research and a cure for his condition. He provided the survivor with detailed plans for a signal interceptor, a device that could hijack the Institute's relay and allow the survivor to teleport inside. Building the signal interceptor would require help. The survivor would need to align with one of the Commonwealth's major factions. Each had the technical expertise and resources necessary, but each would demand something in return: the Brotherhood of Steel. The Brotherhood of Steel had arrived in the Commonwealth with dramatic flair. A massive airship, the Prydwen, had appeared in the sky, anchoring itself above the ruins of Boston Airport. The Brotherhood was a military organization dedicated to recovering and preserving pre-war technology, though their methods and goals had evolved over the centuries. This Eastern Brotherhood, led by Elder Arthur Maxson, viewed themselves as the only ones capable of safely controlling advanced technology. They saw synths as abominations, technology that had gone too far, and they had come to the Commonwealth specifically to destroy the Institute. The survivor had first encountered the Brotherhood after the battle in Concord, when a vertibird had crashed nearby and soldiers in distinctive power armor had fought off feral ghouls. Later, at the Cambridge police station, the survivor met Paladin Dansay and his unit. Dansay was recruiting civilians with potential, and the survivor's actions had impressed him. He offered the survivor the chance to join the Brotherhood. At the Boston Airport, transformed into a military base, the survivor met Elder Maxson. He was young for his position, but carried the weight of leadership with absolute conviction. Maxson explained the Brotherhood's mission. The Institute represented the ultimate abuse of technology, creating synthetic humans that could infiltrate and replace real people. The Brotherhood had come to eliminate this threat permanently. Maxson saw the survivor's quest as aligned with the Brotherhood's goals. If the survivor helped the Brotherhood, they would provide the resources to build the signal interceptor. Under the guidance of Proctor Ingram, the Brotherhood's chief engineer, construction of the signal interceptor began. The device required rare components, military-grade circuitry, specialized power supplies, and a tremendous amount of energy. Brotherhood soldiers scoured the Commonwealth for these parts, while the survivor undertook missions to prove their loyalty. One mission sent the survivor to recover a deep-range transmitter from Fort Strong, overrun by super mutants. Another required infiltrating the Corvega assembly plant, taken over by raiders. Each success strengthened the survivor's position within the Brotherhood and brought the signal interceptor closer to completion. The railroad. But the Brotherhood of Steel was not the only faction interested in the Institute. The railroad was a secretive organization dedicated to rescuing synths from the Institute and helping them escape to freedom. They operated from the shadows, using dead drops, safe houses, and codes to avoid detection. To them, synths were people, deserving of rights and freedom, and the Institute was a slaver organization that needed to be undermined from within. Finding the railroad required solving a puzzle, the Freedom Trail, a red line that snaked through Boston's ruins, connecting historical sites. Following the trail to its end, the survivor discovered the entrance to the railroad's headquarters, hidden in the Old North Church's catacombs. Inside, the organization's leader, Desdemona, was immediately suspicious of the newcomer. The railroad had been burned by infiltrators before, Institute spies pretending to be sympathetic to their cause. Only through the intervention of Deacon, a railroad agent who had been watching the survivor since they left Vault 111, was the survivor allowed to join. Deacon vouched for them, having observed their actions and determined they were genuine. Desdemona remained cautious but explained the railroad's mission. They smuggled synths out of the Institute, gave them new faces and memories through Dr. Amari's technology, and helped them start new lives in the Commonwealth where the Institute couldn't find them. The railroad had their own plans for the signal interceptor. If the survivor could get inside the Institute, they could make contact with an asset the railroad had inside a synth sympathetic to their cause, who could help sabotage the Institute from within. Tinker Tom, the railroad's engineer and resident conspiracy theorist, could build the signal interceptor just as well as the Brotherhood's Ingram. The survivor now faced a choice. The Brotherhood and the railroad had opposing views on synths and the Institute's fate. The Brotherhood wanted total destruction, while the railroad hoped to save the synths within while toppling the Institute's leadership. Both could help build the signal interceptor, but siding with one might make an enemy of the other. The Institute? There was a third option, one suggested by Nick Valentine. The Minutemen, though nearly destroyed, represented a third path. Preston Garvey had been working tirelessly to rebuild the organization, helping the survivor establish settlements across the Commonwealth. The Minutemen had no agenda beyond protecting the people of the Commonwealth. Sturgis, the handyman from Sanctuary Hills, surprised everyone with his technical knowledge that seemed unusually advanced for a simple settler. With his help, the Minutemen could build the signal interceptor independently, allowing the survivor to enter the Institute without pledging loyalty to the Brotherhood or the railroad. Whichever path the survivor chose, the signal interceptor was completed. The device was massive, requiring a platform to be built and enormous amounts of power. When activated, it created a shimmering portal, a tear in space that connected to the Institute's relay. The survivor stepped through and vanished, molecular structure disassembled and reassembled deep beneath the Commonwealth. The Institute was unlike anywhere else in the wasteland. Clean white corridors, advanced laboratories, and synth workers moving with purpose. It was a piece of the old world, preserved and advanced beyond what had existed before the war. The survivor emerged in the relay room, where armed synth guards immediately surrounded them, but no violence erupted. Instead, a man approached an older man with graying hair and a calm demeanor. He introduced himself as Father, the leader of the Institute. Father led the survivor on a tour of the facility. He showed them the bioscience division where synths were created, grown from synthetic organs and programmed with artificial intelligence indistinguishable from human consciousness. He showed them the advanced systems division, where scientists worked on robots and energy weapons. He explained the Institute's philosophy: the surface world was doomed, corrupted by radiation and violence. The Institute represented humanity's best hope, preserving knowledge and technology until the surface could be reclaimed. Then, Father revealed the truth that shattered everything the survivor believed. He led them to a room where a young boy worked on a science project. The boy looked up, and Father said simply, "This is Sean. This is a synth child based on your son. I created him as an experiment in synth aging to see if we could create synthetic children that grow and develop like humans." The survivor's confusion must have been evident, because Father smiled sadly and spoke words that redefined everything. "I am Sean. I am your son." The terrible truth. In a private office, Father explained everything. When he had been kidnapped from Vault 111, he had indeed been a child. The Institute had needed his DNA pure, unmutated, pre-war genetic material for their synth program. He'd been raised in the Institute, educated by its scientists, and had grown up viewing the surface world the way the Institute taught as a savage wasteland beyond saving. 60 years had passed. Sean had become a scientist himself, rising through the Institute's ranks until he led it. He was now an old man, dying from cancer that even the Institute's advanced medicine couldn't cure. The survivor had been kept frozen for most of that time because the Institute considered the parent a backup, more pre-war DNA if needed. It was only recently that Sean, as father, had decided to release the parent from cryogenic suspension. He had known they would come searching, had known they would eventually find a way inside. He wanted to meet the parent, to offer them a place in the Institute, to allow them to see what he had become. The synth child, the young Sean, was Father's final project. He had created a synthetic version of himself, as he might have been if he had grown up in a normal family. A reminder of what he had lost when he was taken from Vault 111. The survivor could see the child as cruel mockery, or as Sean's way of giving them something back, a version of the child they had lost, frozen in that innocent age forever. Father offered the survivor a position in the Institute. Join them, help them, see the surface world as they did a failed experiment that needed to be controlled from below. The survivor could work in whatever division interested them, could have access to all the Institute's resources and knowledge. Father truly believed the Institute represented the best hope for humanity's future, and he wanted the parent to understand and accept that. But the survivor had seen the Commonwealth. They had met settlers trying to build new lives, had seen communities forming, had witnessed people showing courage and kindness in the harshest conditions. The Institute viewed these people as experimental subjects at best, problems to be eliminated at worst. The Institute kidnapped people to replace them with synth infiltrators, creating paranoia and fear. They sabotaged surface efforts to organize and improve conditions, believing that only the Institute should control advanced technology. The survivor faced an impossible choice. Sean was truly their son, aged beyond recognition by time. But the son they had known, the child they had fought to find, was gone, replaced by this man whose values and methods were alien. The Institute had made Sean into Father, and Father had made the Institute into the Commonwealth's nightmare. Fractured loyalties. If the survivor chose to work with the Institute, Father gave them increasingly important assignments. They were sent to the surface to eliminate railroad safe houses, targeting the organization that rescued synths. They assassinated or retrieved escaped synths who had fled to freedom. They worked with a courser, a specialized synth hunter, and witnessed firsthand how efficiently the Institute tracked and eliminated threats. But working for the Institute also revealed its internal divisions. Not every scientist agreed with Father's methods. Some believed the Institute should help the Commonwealth rather than control it. Others questioned the ethics of creating sentient synths only to treat them as property. One scientist, Madison Lee, had worked with the Brotherhood of Steel in the past and brought a different perspective to the Institute's research. If the survivor sided with the Brotherhood of Steel, Elder Maxon's orders became increasingly militant. The Brotherhood demanded the survivor prove their loyalty by eliminating railroad agents and destroying their safe houses. Maxon viewed the railroad as enablers of the synth threat, and their protection of escaped synths made them enemies. The Brotherhood prepared for a final assault on the Institute, building a giant robot from pre-war plans, Liberty Prime, a towering war machine designed to destroy fortified installations. The railroad, if the survivor sided with them, activated their inside agent, a synth named Patriot, who held a position of trust within the Institute. Patriot helped the survivor sabotage Institute operations from within, freeing synths and smuggling them to the surface. Desdemona planned a surgical strike to evacuate as many synths as possible before destroying the Institute's reactor, eliminating the organization while saving those it had enslaved. The Minutemen offered a fourth path. Preston Garvey believed the Institute posed a threat to the Commonwealth settlements, but he also recognized that not everyone inside was an enemy. If enough settlements rallied under the Minutemen banner, they could form an army strong enough to storm the Institute and force a resolution that protected the Commonwealth without the Brotherhood's extremism or the Railroad's sole focus on synths. Faction conflicts. The survivors' choices forced confrontations between the Commonwealth's factions. If the survivors sided with the Brotherhood, Elder Maxon eventually declared that the Railroad and Minutemen could not be allowed to oppose the Brotherhood's mission. Soldiers were dispatched to eliminate the Railroad's headquarters and suppress the Minutemen if they resisted. Desdemona died fighting to protect her organization, and the Freedom Trail ran red once more. If the survivors sided with the Railroad, the Brotherhood's airship became a target. Tinker Tom devised a plan to infiltrate the Prydwen using a vertibird, plant explosives in its reactor, and escape before it detonated. The survivors fought their way through Brotherhood knights and paladins. Former allies turned enemies. The airship fell from the sky in flames, taking Elder Maxon and hundreds of Brotherhood soldiers with it. The Institute itself became the final battleground. Liberty Prime, if the Brotherhood's plan proceeded, marched through the Commonwealth toward the CIT ruins where the Institute lay hidden. The giant robot destroyed everything in its path, its weapons designed to penetrate deep underground. The assault team followed in its wake, teleporting directly into the Institute's facility. If the Railroad's plan unfolded, the evacuation happened first. The survivor helped Patriot move synths to safe houses, providing cover as Institute security tried to stop them. When the last synth was clear, the survivor planted a bomb in the Institute's nuclear reactor, designed to trigger a catastrophic meltdown. The Minutemen's assault was more direct. Artillery positioned at the castle bombarded the CIT ruins, creating an opening for Minutemen soldiers to enter. They fought through synth defenders, regular people with courage facing advanced technology, determined to protect the Commonwealth from the Institute's interference. The nuclear option, whichever path led there, the conclusion was the same. The Institute's reactor went critical. Father, if still alive, made a final appearance. If the survivor had sided with him, he approved of their loyalty even as his organization crumbled. If they had betrayed him, he expressed disappointment rather than anger, cancer, and battle wounds, leaving him too weak for rage. He asked the survivor to take care of Synth Sean, to give the child the life the real Sean never had. Then Father died, and the survivor had to escape. The Institute's corridors became a maze of failing systems and panicking scientists. Synths fought to the last, their programming compelling them to defend their home even as it became their tomb. The survivor ran for the relay, Synth Sean's hand in theirs if they chose to save the child. The molecular relay engaged one final time, and the survivor vanished just as the reactor entered full meltdown. On the surface, near the CIT ruins, the ground shook. Then, a pillar of atomic fire erupted from beneath the earth, a nuclear detonation that mirrored the bombs of 2077. The Institute, the great shadowy power that had haunted the Commonwealth for decades, was gone. Where it had existed, there was now only a radioactive crater aftermath. The Commonwealth changed in the wake of the Institute's destruction. Without the fear of infiltration and replacement, settlements grew more confident, trade routes opened, communities cooperated, and the slow work of rebuilding civilization continued. If the Brotherhood of Steel survived, the Prydwen remained anchored over the airport. The Brotherhood claimed the Institute's technology, studying what they could salvage and destroying what they deemed too dangerous. Elder Maxon declared victory, but kept his forces in the Commonwealth, protecting it with an iron fist that some settlements welcomed and others resented. If the Railroad survived, they continued their work quietly. There were still synths in the Commonwealth, escaped Institute survivors, and newly freed individuals who needed help starting fresh lives. Desdemona and her agents worked from the shadows, as they always had, creating new identities and protecting those the Commonwealth feared. If the Minutemen triumphed, Preston Garvey finally had the resources to rebuild the organization properly. The castle was reclaimed and restored. Settlements joined the Minutemen's alliance, and the Commonwealth had defenders who answered to the people rather than to ideology. Preston offered the survivor leadership of the Minutemen, a general to guide them, but ultimately left the choice to them. The survivor returned to Sanctuary Hills, where Codsworth still maintained his cheerful vigil. The settlement had grown from ruins into a community. Sturgis tinkered with salvage technology, Preston organized patrols, and settlers worked the farms and defenses. It was far from the pre-war suburb the survivor remembered, but it was home again, transformed and reborn. Synth Sean, if rescued, played in Sanctuary Hills like any other child. Some settlers viewed him with suspicion, knowing what he was, but others simply saw a child who needed a family. The survivor had come full circle, entered Vault 111 with a child, lost that child to violence and time, and emerged with a child again, this one created rather than born, but no less real in the ways that mattered, the greater Commonwealth. Beyond the main conflicts, the Commonwealth was filled with stories and settlements, each struggling to survive in the post-apocalyptic world. Goodneighbor remained a haven for outcasts. John Hancock continued to rule with his particular brand of chaotic justice, welcoming those Diamond City rejected. The Memory Den still offered its services, allowing people to relive better times or escape harsh realities. The neighborhood's chem dealers and criminals operated openly, but under Hancock's watch, they knew better than to prey on the weak. Diamond City faced its own turmoil. Mayor McDonough, it could be discovered, was himself a synth, an institute plant designed to undermine the Commonwealth's largest settlement from within. His exposure caused riots in the streets, paranoia about who else might be a synth, and a crisis of leadership. Piper Wright's newspaper, Public Occurrences, worked to calm the panic while reporting the truth, a difficult balance in desperate times. The USS Constitution, a pre-war ship somehow landlocked in the ruins of Boston, was inhabited by malfunctioning robot crew members who believed they were still in the Revolutionary War era. They had a mission to reach the Atlantic Ocean, despite being miles inland and centuries removed from their original purpose. Their determination was both comedic and tragic, a reminder of how the old world's technology persisted in broken and confused forms. Salem, to the north, had become the territory of a man calling himself the Pillars of the Community. He ran a settlement with strict rules and religious overtones, but his authority was challenged by rumors and suspicion. The town of Salem, famous in the pre-war era for witch trials, echoed with similar paranoia in the post-apocalyptic world, only now the fear was of synths rather than witches. Covenant was a settlement with a dark secret. Its residents had developed a test, supposedly able to identify synths through psychological profiling. Those who failed the test were taken to a secret location and killed. The settlement's clean appearance and friendly demeanor masked the fact that they were murdering innocent people based on a flawed test, their fear of synths driving them to atrocity. The Far Harbor. North of the Commonwealth, on an island off the coast of Maine, lay Far Harbor. This settlement of fishermen and traders clung to existence on an island increasingly consumed by radioactive fog. The fog mutated creatures into terrifying new forms, hermit crabs that used cars and trucks as shells, gulpers that swallowed prey whole, and fog crawlers that hunted in the mist like maritime nightmares. The survivor might venture to Far Harbor seeking a missing person, a young woman named Kasumi Nakano who believed she was a synth. The investigation would lead to the island, where three factions struggled for control. Far Harbor itself, the settlement of regular people trying to survive, was led by the Mariner, a shipbuilder, and Captain Avery. The Children of Adam, a religious cult that worshipped radiation, had established a settlement in the nucleus, a submarine base they considered holy ground. And Acadia, a refuge for escaped synths led by Dima, an early model synth with Nick Valentine's face and a troubled conscience, offered protection for those fleeing the Institute. Dima had a terrible secret. He had orchestrated the murder and replacement of Captain Avery with a synth, believing that a synth in leadership could better protect both Far Harbor and Acadia. He had also murdered a Children of Adam leader and hidden nuclear launch codes that could destroy their settlement. These actions weighed on his conscience, so he had removed his own memories of the crimes, storing them in secret facilities across the island. Dima was both protector and manipulator, convinced that his ends justified the means, but unwilling to live with the memory of what he had done. The survivor could expose Dima's crimes, unite the settlements, or maintain the uneasy peace through lies. Each choice had consequences. Far Harbor's people deserved the truth, but the truth might ignite a war that would destroy them all. The children of Adam were fanatics, but they were still people with beliefs and communities. Acadia offered safety to synths with nowhere else to go, but it was founded on murder and deception. Nuka World. West of the Commonwealth lay Nuka World, a pre-war amusement park built around the Nuka-Cola brand. After the bombs fell, raiders had taken over the park, turning it into a haven for the Commonwealth's most violent criminals. 3 raider gangs controlled different sections: the Disciples, who worshiped violence and torture, the Pack, who fought with trained animals and valued strength, and the Operators, who viewed raiding as a business enterprise. The survivor might be lured to Nuka World by a radio broadcast promising treasure. Upon arrival, they would be captured and forced to fight in the Gauntlet, a deadly maze designed to kill intruders. Surviving the Gauntlet meant confronting the raiders' overboss, and killing him meant inheriting his position. Suddenly, the survivor found themselves leading 3 raider gangs and controlling an entire amusement park. Shank, the overboss's lieutenant, explained the situation. The raiders wanted to expand beyond Nuka World, to take over settlements in the Commonwealth. As overboss, the survivor could lead them, assigning gangs to claim settlements and turning the Commonwealth into raider territory. It was a dark path, one that contradicted everything Preston Garvey and the Minutemen stood for, but it was a path available to those who chose power over principle. Alternatively, the survivor could turn against the raiders, working with a slave named Mackenzie Bridgman to free the captives and eliminate the gang leaders. This path was dangerous, requiring the survivor to fight through 3 armies of raiders, but it restored Nuka World to something resembling civilization. The Mechanist. In a facility beneath the Commonwealth, a figure called the Mechanist had emerged. This villain commanded an army of robots that attacked settlements, killing people in the name of protecting them. The robots were pre-war models, assaultrons, sentry bots, and protectrons, but modified with advanced weapons and hostile programming. The survivors' investigation revealed that the Mechanist was Isabel Cruz, a scientist who had discovered a facility full of robot building equipment. Inspired by the Silver Shroud, a pre-war radio hero, she had taken on the persona of the Mechanist from those old stories. But her programming had gone wrong. She intended her robots to help people, but faulty directives made them interpret protection as eliminating all potential threats, including the people they were meant to save. Confronting the Mechanists could end in violence or understanding. If the survivor revealed the truth about what her robots were doing, Isabel was horrified. She never intended harm and agreed to shut down the robot army. The survivor inherited her facility and technology, gaining the ability to build their own robots for settlement, defense, or personal use. The Vault-Tec workshop, Vault 88, hidden beneath Quincy Quarries, was an unfinished vault that Vault-Tec had been constructing when the bombs fell. Its overseer, Valerie Barstow, had been placed in cryogenic suspension and awakened 2 centuries later. She invited the survivor to help complete the vault, but her true purpose was disturbing. She wanted to continue Vault-Tec's social experiments, testing settlers in cruel and unusual ways under the guise of improving life. The survivor could assist her experiments or refuse, choosing instead to build Vault 88 into a genuine shelter for the Commonwealth's people. Either way, the vault represented the dark legacy of Vault-Tec, a corporation that had sacrificed thousands of people to gather data on human behavior in extreme conditions. Companions on the journey. Throughout their journey, the survivor was never truly alone. Companions from across the Commonwealth offered to travel with them, each bringing unique skills and perspectives. Piper Wright, the reporter, fought to expose the truth about the Institute and the Commonwealth's other threats. She valued honesty and despised those who preyed on the weak. Her optimism and determination made her a fierce ally. Nick Valentine, the synth detective, struggled with questions of identity and purpose. Was he the pre-war detective whose memories he carried, or was he someone new? His dry wit and investigative skills made him invaluable, and his perspective on synth rights added depth to discussions about the Institute. Preston Garvey carried the weight of the Minutemen's fall and hoped for their rebirth. His unwavering dedication to helping settlements sometimes made him seem naive, but his courage was genuine. He dreamed of a Commonwealth where ordinary people could live without fear. John Hancock, the Ghoul mayor, sought adventure and purpose beyond Good Neighbor's walls. His past as a human and his choice to become a ghoul gave him unique insights into prejudice and survival. He valued freedom above all else and hated those who tried to control others. Kate was a cage fighter from the combat zone, addicted to chems and haunted by abuse from her childhood. Her initial cynicism and violence masked deep pain, helping her overcome her addiction and confront her demons, revealed the person she could become, still tough, but no longer self-destructive. Curie was a Miss Nanny robot assigned to Vault 81, where she had spent 2 centuries conducting research. Her childlike wonder at the world and desire to experience humanity led her to request transfer into a synth body. As a synthetic human, she experienced emotions and sensations for the first time, approaching everything with scientific curiosity and genuine joy. Dance was a Brotherhood paladin, loyal to Elder Maxon and dedicated to the Brotherhood's mission. His devotion made the discovery of his true nature all the more devastating. Dance himself was a synth, an escaped Institute creation who didn't know what he was. The Brotherhood's rules demanded his execution, forcing both Danse and the survivor to choose between duty and compassion. Deacon was a railroad spy who wore many faces and told many stories. His true past was unclear, he claimed, different histories in different conversations, and it was impossible to know which, if any, were true. His dedication to the railroad was genuine, but his methods involved constant deception, even to those he called friends. Macready was a mercenary from the capital wasteland, working in the Commonwealth to earn money for his sick son's treatment. His cynical exterior and focus on Caps masked a devoted father willing to do anything to save his child. His past with a group called the Lamplighters and his struggles to survive in a harsh world made him both sympathetic and morally flexible. Robert Joseph Macready had traveled far from his home, and helping him find a cure for his son revealed the lengths parents would go to protect their children, a theme that resonated deeply with the survivor's own journey. Strong was a super mutant who sought the milk of human kindness, a concept he had heard in a holotape from a pre-war radio play. He believed it was a literal substance that made humans strong, and he traveled with the survivor hoping to find it. His simple worldview and violent nature made him a challenging companion, but his genuine curiosity about humanity showed that even super mutants could think beyond violence. X6-88 was a courser, an Institute synth designed for hunting and combat. He believed absolutely in the Institute's mission and viewed surface dwellers as inferior. His cold efficiency and unquestioning loyalty made him useful but unsettling, a reminder of what the Institute created and how it viewed the world. Dogmeat was a German shepherd who had survived in the wasteland alone until meeting the survivor. The dog's loyalty never wavered, his companionship never judgmental. In a world of moral complexity and difficult choices, Dogmeat represented simple, unconditional companionship, a reminder of the bonds between humans and animals that survived even nuclear apocalypse. The settlements. Across the Commonwealth, dozens of potential settlement sites waited for people willing to brave the dangers and build new communities. Red Rocket Truck Stop, Starlight Drive-In, Spectacle Island, and many others could be transformed from ruins into thriving settlements. The survivor, working with Preston Garvey or independently, helped establish these communities. Each needed defenses against raiders, super mutants, and other threats. Turrets, walls, and guard posts protected against external dangers. Food production required farms, water purifiers provided clean drinking water, and power generators supplied electricity for lights and machinery. Settlers arrived from across the Commonwealth, drawn by the promise of safety and community. Some were refugees from destroyed settlements. Others were travelers tired of the dangerous roads. They brought skills farmers, merchants, guards, and craftspeople. Under the survivors' guidance, these disparate individuals formed communities. Supply lines connected settlements, allowing resources to be shared. A farming community could send food to a settlement focused on manufacturing, while that settlement sent weapons and armor back. The network of settlements became a web of mutual support, the foundation of the Commonwealth's recovery. But settlements also faced challenges. Raiders attacked, demanding tribute or violence. Super mutant warbands sought captives and destruction. Synths infiltrated communities, replacements sent by the Institute before its fall. Settlers feuded with each other, kidnappings created emergencies, and machinery broke down. The survivor, as the settlement's founder or the Minutemen's general, responded to these crises, maintaining the fragile civilization they had helped create. Technical marvels. The Commonwealth contained remnants of advanced pre-war technology. Power armor, once issued to soldiers on the front lines, could be found in military bases, hidden in garages, or worn by raiders who had stumbled upon it. Each suit required a fusion core for power, and these cores were increasingly rare 2 centuries after their manufacture. The survivor could collect different models, T-45, T-51, T-60, and the rare X-1 suits each, offering different levels of protection and capabilities. Weapons ranged from crude pipe pistols cobbled together from scrap to advanced energy weapons that fired lasers or plasma. The survivor could modify weapons at crafting stations, adding scopes, extending magazines, improving accuracy or damage. A simple hunting rifle could become a sniper rifle with the right modifications, while a laser pistol could be transformed into a devastating sniper rifle. The Pip-Boy on the survivor's wrist was itself a marvel, a personal computer that managed inventory, displayed maps, tracked quests, and even played holotape games. The device had been standard issue in vaults designed to help dwellers manage their underground lives. In the wasteland, it became an indispensable tool for survival. Power armor stations allowed for repairs and modifications. Paint schemes could be applied, Minutemen colors, Brotherhood of Steel insignias, or intimidating flames and patterns. Jetpacks could be installed, allowing short flights. The armor could be upgraded piece by piece, improving protection and adding special capabilities. The creatures? The Commonwealth's fauna had mutated in fascinating and horrifying ways. Radroaches, once common pests, had grown to the size of dogs, their chitinous bodies resistant to small arms fire. Mole rats burrowed through the ground, attacking in packs. Bloatflies exploded when killed, spraying acid. Stingwings swarmed in groups, their stingers injecting painful venom. Larger creatures posed greater threats. Yaoguai were mutated black bears, massive and aggressive. Deathclaws, possibly engineered before the war as weapons, were the most dangerous creatures in the wasteland, fast, strong, and intelligent enough to hunt in packs or set ambushes. Rat scorpions had grown to enormous sizes, their pincers powerful enough to cut through armor. The waters weren't safe either. Mirelurks, mutated from crustaceans, built nests along the Commonwealth's coasts and rivers. Different varieties existed, the standard Mirelurks with hard shells, Mirelurk hunters that could spit acid, and the terrifying Mirelurk queens that towered over humans and commanded entire colonies. Feral ghouls were perhaps the saddest creatures. Once human, they had been transformed by radiation into mindless predators. They lurked in ruins, attacking anything that moved with surprising speed and ferocity. Some glowed with internal radiation, their bodies so saturated that they damaged anything nearby. The sight of feral ghouls served as a warning this could be the fate of any human exposed to too much radiation. Not all ghouls went feral, but the fear of that transformation haunted every ghoul in the Commonwealth. The factions' philosophies. Each major faction offered a vision for the Commonwealth's future, and none were entirely right or wrong. The Institute believed that surface civilization had failed. The bombs proved that humanity couldn't be trusted with freedom and advanced technology. Only through careful control, through the Institute's guidance, could humanity avoid repeating the mistakes of the past. They created synths to serve, viewing them as tools rather than people. They saw the Commonwealth as a testing ground, its people as variables in experiments. From their perspective, this was necessary. The surface dwellers would destroy themselves without intervention, and individual lives mattered less than the survival of human knowledge and capability. The Brotherhood of Steel believed that technology had caused the apocalypse and that most people couldn't be trusted with advanced weapons or tools. Their mission was to preserve and control technology, ensuring it was used responsibly. They viewed synths as an abomination, artificial beings that could infiltrate and replace humans. The Brotherhood's militaristic structure and absolute rules came from a belief that only through discipline and control could humanity avoid another apocalypse. They genuinely wanted to protect people, but their methods often involved imposing their will regardless of what those people wanted. The Railroad believed that sentience created personhood, that synths were people deserving freedom and rights. They operated on the principle that slavery was wrong, whether the enslaved were born or built. The Railroad saw the Commonwealth's paranoia about synths as similar to historical prejudices against those who were different. They risked their lives to save individuals, focusing on immediate liberation rather than broader political goals. To them, the Institute was a slaver organization, and freeing even one synth justified any risk. The Minutemen represented democracy and community defense. They believed the Commonwealth's people should determine their own future, free from the Brotherhood's military control, the Institute's manipulation, or the Railroad's single-issue focus. The Minutemen protected settlements because communities requested protection, not to impose ideology. Their weakness was also their strength. Without centralized control or strict ideology, they were flexible and responsive to people's needs, but also more vulnerable to betrayal and collapse, the end and the beginning. The survivor's journey transformed the Commonwealth, but the wasteland remained dangerous. Raiders still attacked, creatures still hunted, and radiation still poisoned the land. The Institute's fall eliminated one threat but created power vacuums and left questions about escaped synths unanswered. The Brotherhood's presence brought order but also military occupation. The Railroad's work continued, helping synths integrate into surface society. The Minutemen grew stronger, responding to calls for help across the region. In Sanctuary Hills, the survivor could finally rest. The settlement thrived, crops growing in the irradiated soil, purified water flowing from pumps, walls keeping dangers at bay. At night, lights powered by salvaged generators cast a warm glow. Settlers gathered to share stories, play music, or simply enjoy not being alone in the wasteland. The survivor might visit the spouse's cryopod in Vault 111, a memorial to what was lost. Or they might look toward the future, watching Synth Sean play with other children, a reminder that life continued even after unimaginable loss. The Commonwealth would never be the world before the bombs, but it could be something new, built on the ruins of the old world by people determined to survive and eventually thrive. 210 years after the bombs fell, the Commonwealth still struggled, still fought, still hoped, and one person, frozen in time and thrust into a transformed world, had become a part of that hope, the sole survivor, who had entered Vault 111 to save their family and emerged to help save the Commonwealth itself. The story of Fallout 4 was not just about finding a lost child or destroying the Institute. It was about what people do when civilization falls, how they survive, what they sacrifice, who they become. It was about the choices that define us, the communities we build, and the legacies we leave behind. In a world destroyed by humanity's worst impulses, it asked whether those same humans could create something better from the ashes. The answer, like everything in the Commonwealth, depended on the choices made by those willing to act.